China is quietly buying up Jamaica and the Caribbean, ports, roads, even five-star resorts. But is this investment or a takeover? And what does Donald Trump have to say about all of this? Buckle up, because this is a geopolitical showdown you don't want to miss. Hey, patriotic internet friends and family, welcome back to the channel. In this video, a lot of people been speculating, say China own Jamaica and the Caribbean and take it over from America. So in this video, we are going to put all of that to rest. We have all of the facts, all of the receipts, and basically I have all of the tea for exposing this breakdown and deep dive. So watch the video till the end. First off, we are going to establish China's growing presence in the Caribbean through billions in investments and soft loans. China has steadily expanded its economic and strategic presence in the Caribbean by investing billions of dollars through a mix of direct investments and soft loans. Since 2005, at least $7 billion has been funneled into major infrastructure projects, including ports, roads, bridges, airports, and luxury resorts, though the actual figure is believed to be in the tens of billions. Unlike Western lenders, China's financing often comes with fewer political strings attached, making it attractive to cash-strapped island nations. However, many of these soft loans come with conditions that require Chinese contractors, laborers, and materials, allowing Beijing to gain long-term economic leverage over these countries. Key strategic assets such as Jamaica's Kingston Free Port, the Bahamas' Bahamar Casino, and major tourism developments in Barbados are now under Chinese influence, reinforcing Beijing's grip on the region's trade, commerce, and infrastructure, while sidelining traditional Western partners. As it relates to these so-called traditional Western partners, the relationship where the West have with former slave colonies and Africa is that of a slave master and slave relationship. So Western nations still practice neocolonialism, still are going with economic colonization. So that has always been the relationship between the Western powers such as England, Canada, and America with the Caribbean and Africa. But China take a different approach. You see, China come to us as a business partner with a deal that is mutually beneficial both to Jamaica and to China. And these Western powers not like that, because China equal BRICS. You get it? And that's how the West hate about China. So in every way, shape, or form, them a fight and demonize and tell lies and propaganda on China. These loans we get from IMF and World Bank and private Western lenders, it is one-sided. It is only meant to benefit the West. Jamaica has never benefited from no IMF or World Bank loan, never. Now, let me explain the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, and how China is strategically securing influence. The Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, is China's global infrastructure economic development strategy aimed at expanding trade routes and strengthening its geopolitical influence. Launched in 2013 by President Xi Jinping, the BRI seeks to connect Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Americas through massive investments in roads, railways, ports, and energy projects. By offering low-interest loans and soft financing to developing nations, China secures long-term economic leverage, often requiring recipient countries to use Chinese contractors, labor, and materials. This strategy allows Beijing to establish deep economic dependencies, gain access to natural resources, and control critical trade infrastructure, effectively expanding its sphere of influence while challenging Western dominance in global finance and diplomacy. Critics argue this approach leads to debt diplomacy, where struggling nations risk ceding strategic assets to China if they fail to repay their loans. Let me explain and define what is debt trap diplomacy or predatory lending. The debt trap narrative, also commonly referred to as predatory lending, states that China uses excessive lending to developing countries, knowing full well these countries will not have the means to repay these loans. In turn, these countries, many of them very poor, will then be forced to default on the loans and hand over key strategic assets to China, or be forced to otherwise compromise their sovereignty to satisfy Beijing. Johns Hopkins University professor and director of the China-Africa Research Initiative in Washington, D.C., Deborah Brattigam, says no evidence of Chinese debt traps in Africa. China's critics of the Belt and Road Initiative, who accuses China of pursuing this said debt trap diplomacy, these critics are largely led by the United States, who are determined to warn developing countries about the risk of borrowing too much money from Beijing by saying things like, no borrow no money from China, they more use their loan here to financially entrap economically vulnerable countries as a part of a broader effort to exert political influence and control. Those are the lies and propaganda where America and the West are push. So me just debunk the narrative we're out there, which is China own Jamaica, or China own the Caribbean, China practice predatory lending. So in this video, I present the argument, which is the current narrative, and then me debunk it with the counter arguments. You get me? There is no evidence anywhere in the world to suggest that China is practicing or involved in debt trap diplomacy with any country where they lend money to. It's a lie. Don't listen to mainstream media. China is not the enemy or as evil as where the West I try paint them as, based off of my research and all the information where me read through and go through so far. Now me could address and mention some major infrastructure projects such as Kingston Freeport, Bahamas Casino, Barbados tourism sector. China has strategically invested in major infrastructure projects across the Caribbean, securing economic influence through ports, tourism, and real estate. In Jamaica, China Merchants Port took full control of Kingston Freeport. That's a lie, but make we continue. The island's largest container port in April 2023, strengthening Beijing's grip on regional trade and logistics. In the Bahamas, China financed and built the Bahamar Casino and Resort, a $4.2 billion luxury project that became the region's largest casino, symbolizing China's dominance in the Caribbean's hospitality sector. Meanwhile, in Barbados, China has poured at least $490 million into the tourism sector, funding hotel and resort developments while establishing beneficial tax and trade agreements to attract more Chinese investors. These projects not only boost China's economic presence, but also give it long-term leverage over key industries and strategic locations in the Caribbean. Now back to the Kingston Freeport. Now let me debunk China owning the Kingston Freeport. China Merchants Port only own 49% of the Kingston Freeport. The other 51% is owned by and retained by CMA-CGM, a French company. So this is how the media spread lies and tell propaganda. So if you don't know the information, you the listener, you the average reader, without doing your own independent research, will be fed lies and be led astray. Cool? So me don't know what's the big deal with China having part of the port. When the French did own and control the port, nobody never did a talk about it. Nobody did even know say the French people from France did a control and own the port. So you see how Western propaganda go? When the West not like you and them a demonize you, now we are going to introduce some drama. China's power moves versus Western powers, including Trump's policies trying to counter China's influence. The battle for influence in the Caribbean has escalated into a geopolitical tug of war between China and Western powers, particularly the US under Donald Trump, while China has aggressively expanded its presence by investing billions in infrastructure, ports, and tourism. The US has viewed this as a direct challenge to its historic dominance in the region. Trump's administration responded with aggressive countermeasures, warning Caribbean nations about China's debt trap diplomacy and urging them to reject Beijing's loans. Trump even hosted Caribbean leaders at Mar-a-Lago, promising economic aid and investment alternatives to counter China's growing influence. However, China's strategy of offering easy financing with fewer political conditions has made it an attractive partner for cash-strapped island nations. Despite Western warnings, this brewing conflict highlights a new Cold War-like struggle, where Caribbean nations find themselves caught between Chinese economic incentives and US political pressure, forced to navigate a delicate balancing act between the two global superpowers. You see, US would have come like so neglectful man where nah treat them woman at them yard good, I ignore them woman, nah carry her upon dates like when you used to treat her, nah buy her no gifts, Valentine's Day just come and gone and ignore her, I focus on other things around, and then she meet a new man. Jamaica meet China, and China come and a do what US never did a do and should have been doing. So as comes America basically lose the Caribbean to China. When we see the big scandal we bust out about USAID and the billions on top of billions of dollars where they squander and waste on pushing aquatic creature agendas, when don't make no sense, all because them a try push a global depopulation agenda, because guess what? Man to man and woman to woman can't produce no offspring. You get what I say? So meanwhile America focus on crap like them there, nonsense like them there, China come in and just take over. I am all for China. I am all for BRICS. But here's where things get messy, because these investments come with strings attached, and some Caribbean nations are starting to feel the squeeze. At this rate, don't be surprised if the next dancehall hit is sponsored by Beijing. And you know how Western propaganda go already. Oh, China come with debt trap diplomacy, and you know the West not like in BRICS or no nation with the inner BRICS, because BRICS is too powerful. Them a demonize China and a spread lies and propaganda and a talk about debt trap diplomacy. Some experts warn China's loans are a way to control small economies. That I lie and the propaganda with them a spread upon China. So now the veil has been lifted and we realize that is what the IMF and World Bank and countries like America, that's their strategy where them a use all along for control small and developing nations like Jamaica. So because them know say that them a do and have been doing, them a try put their strategy onto China for trick and confuse if you say, oh yes, it what them a say makes sense. Debt trap diplomacy, economic colonization, it makes sense with truth. You see me? But in reality, that is what they are doing and what they have been doing to us. A style way and I put it on China. Not no go so. Trump versus China. When Trump was in power in a first term, his administration warned Caribbean nations against China's influence. And now in second term now, and no change because China influence even grows stronger under the Biden-Harris administration. As we can see, the Biden-Harris administration give USAID for fund LGBT advocacy in Jamaica. Then give no money for build no roads, build no school, build no hospital. Then give nothing for uplift we. China's loans are for uplift Caribbean islands. Based off of when me I see with my own two eyes. And when me I read and research for myself. America and the West will not give you no money for make you develop and grow. None at all. Them a hold you down. That's why you see them a demonize China and I go so hard for spread lies and propaganda upon China. Because China a uplift and a build we up so we can be independent. You see me, and America and Europe, England and Canada, them no want that. The former colonizers don't want that. That's why yesterday they go so hard with their smear campaign for tell lies from China. Them even go as far as to say Barbados cutting ties with the Queen. UK politicians suggest China's influence pushed Barbados to drop the monarchy. Those are the lies where the West tell. You see me, so this politician in England, some Tom Tungen Hat, chairman of the UK's Foreign Affairs Committee, accused Beijing of playing a large role in Barbados's recent call to drop the Queen as the head of state. Things like them that them put out in the media, in a mainstream media outlet, mainstream newspaper, lies and propaganda. Them say Western companies pushed out, Chinese firms dominate projects while British and American companies struggle to compete. Yeah, because China is a better option. You see, China come to the Caribbean and to Africa as a partner. That are the difference between China and the West. When the West deal with Caribbean former slave colonies Africa, them a deal with you like I am in charge and you're the slave. You do what me say. Simple as that. You do what me say. I mean I do nothing for you and you have to do what me say. So there's no partnership between Jamaica and America. There's no partnership between Africa and America, Africa and England, Africa and Europe. No. Then talk down to we and dictate terms to we. Picture this for example. When these people, like for example America call big meeting with the Caribbean leaders, Trump called big meeting with the Caribbean leaders, it's basically if it tell you what you have to do, you get what me saying? And talk down to you and dictate terms. And at the same time then promise say them all do this, promise say them all do that. But then I do it. And some locals in Jamaica and within the Caribbean will say Chinese construction firms bring their own workers, taking jobs away from locals. Me not see nothing wrong with that. Honestly, I don't see nothing wrong with that. On the flip side, during the roadwork construction, me see whole heap of locals at work with like maybe one Chinese supervise the project. You see me? So you cannot blame a nation like China who practices nationalism. Jamaica need to start practice nationalism. That's why China so powerful. They believe in themselves and they build themselves. China them a come from nothing, A lot of you don't know the history of China, China is coming from a third world status. So make that sink in for a second. China was a poor, struggling, developing country. China's rise from a poor developing country to a major economic power in about 4 decades. So we are talking about a 40-year time span is very impressive and spectacular. And how did this happen? Through some serious economic reforms. You see, China maintained policies that kept them economically very poor, stagnant, centrally controlled, vastly inefficient, and relatively isolated from the global economy. And all of this happened in 1979. That's why I want to hear me so big on patriotism and nationalism, because that are the key to Africa and the African diaspora becoming a dominant global superpower. So is China just helping the Caribbean, or is this a slow motion takeover? And what happens when the debt comes due? So make we address the future outlook. China is building much needed infrastructure, offering opportunities Caribbean nations wouldn't get otherwise. The debate over China's growing influence in the Caribbean is sharply divided. Supporters argue that China is providing essential infrastructure and economic opportunities that Caribbean nations wouldn't otherwise have access to, helping to modernize roads, ports, airports, and tourism hubs without the harsh conditions imposed by Western lenders like IMF, World Bank. They see China as a pragmatic partner offering much needed development. The opposing argument to that now, as a counter argument, is China is using debt diplomacy to gain long-term control over key assets. On the flip side, some critics warn that China's strategy is a form of debt trap diplomacy, where seemingly generous loans comes with hidden strings attached, forcing nations to rely on Chinese labor and companies, while accumulating debts they may struggle to repay. Over time, this could lead to Beijing gaining control over key assets, such as Jamaica Kingston Freeport, giving China significant economic and political leverage in the region. No, that lie and propaganda has been debunked about the Kingston Freeport. A key thing to note is you hear America put out the narrative of the debt trap diplomacy. You see, they are the ones who actually invented terms like that. They are the ones, along with multilateral agencies like the IMF and the World Bank, who engages in and practices these said predatory lending and debt trap diplomacy. That's why them I use the term, you see me? And I try brand China with that lie and propaganda. One thing you need to learn about America and the West, you see, anything where them accuse one next country of doing, they are the ones who are actually practicing and doing it. Don't fall for the lies and the propaganda where them a try spread and put on China. What's next? Is the Caribbean trading one colonial power, i.e. the West, for another, China? Predictions. Will the US push back harder? Will Caribbean nations resist Chinese influence? Here's a summary of the highlights and the key points. Now make a recap. China has invested billions in Jamaica and the Caribbean through loans and infrastructure projects. Some believe this is a soft power move to gain political and economic control. China's presence is squeezing out Western companies and sometimes local workers. The US and the UK are increasingly worried, with some blaming China for influencing Barbados breaking from the monarchy. The debate: is this economic development or a debt trap? And if you want to see how Trump responds to China's global influence in the Caribbean and Jamaica, click here to watch the next video. Make sure to like, share, and comment with your thoughts. Do you think China is helping or just trapping these countries in debt? Let's discuss in the comments.